So hearty welcome to all the distinguished speakers and participants and authorities from the International Sociological Association, and who really I'm thankful for the executive committee of ISA for kindly granted permission for the RC Research Committee 41 and Research Committee 46 and Target Group 3 to have a joint webinar, second webinar in the title of the Sociology-Policy in Difference, Applied and Clinical Sociology. And as for that, an ISA intended to explore this webinar with the unique title, which is highly needed. And this webinar, the second webinar of the ISA, is proposed to be explored the ideas regarding the applied sociology and clinical sociology, how the sociology being more applicable in the current context, and how the sociology is not being as only a theoretical science, and how it's become as a practical science and make it possible, practical and applied way how it solves the human society and address the needs of the human society today. So I'm really glad to welcome all the distinguished speakers of the webinar, ourselves with Professor Jan Mary Fritz, who is here as a professor from the University of Cincinnati and distinguished visiting professor of the University of Johannesburg, as visiting professor right now as Uppsala University, and is also being as an ISA executive committee member. I am also glad to welcome the another distinguished speaker of the second webinar as Professor Dina Udis, the University of Johannesburg and South Africa and University and South Africa, and is also being as an ISA executive member and being a convener and president of Research Committee 46. I also glad to welcome the another speaker, distinguished speaker of this webinar, Professor Ima Poria, Professor of Sociology and Ateneo de Manila University, Philippines. She has been joined with us for the sessions as a third speaker. I also glad to welcome the another distinguished speaker of this second webinar, Professor Yoni Wissing, professor from the Salam State University, USA. She has joined us. And I'm really thankful to my colleague and co-convener of the second webinar, Professor Namita Gupta, has joined with us. And also I'm thankful to Professor Allison and who has been facilitated, the president and the vice president of the Research Council of International Sociological Association, who has facilitated us. Also, I'm thankful to Professor Cecilia Jelko Manila, who has been supported us technically as being an administrative side to begin this webinar. So with the glad, without taking much time, because already we have been for half an hour has been passed as from scheduled time, I'm glad to welcome the first speaker of the webinar, Professor Jan Mary Fritz, as a professor and from the University of Cincinnati, distinguished professor from the University of Johannesburg. And professor is being here to present her talk on the human rights and addressing mandatory retirement policies and practices. Ma'am, the session is over to you, ma'am. Please welcome. You can begin your talk, madam. Please.
Hello, thank you. I'm sorry that you can't see my lovely outdoors here in Uppsala, Sweden. The plant behind me, because this is a hotel room, I brought in from the corridor, so I hope nobody misses it until we finish the seminar. I'm today talking about human rights and addressing mandatory retirement policies and practices. First, I want to say something about clinical sociology. I've learned the value of saying some adjectives when you describe what you do. It's rights-based, humanistic, interdisciplinary, and intended to be creative. It focuses on analysis and intervention. And if you are at the lowest level of school, you might not be thinking about doing research. Say you're managing the shoe store, but that's the analysis of the situation, how you treat people, the customers, how you treat the people who are working for you. The same if you're running a department or a committee or you're a consultant. And so we have some who will do research and some not. Some do research that is the typical kind of research, and some do applied research. But we also involve this with intervention, trying to make changes. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Human rights, as you see in the second paragraph, is about moral principles, about having freedom. The interesting thing is that most of the treaties that are out there may say something in general about people, but they never mention older adults. And usually if somebody's asked, they'll say, well, older adults are included. One of the things that is very concerning for older adults is this subject of mandatory retirement. Actually, I'd never heard of this because I come from the United States and grew up without something like this. So the first I'd ever heard of it was from actually somebody at an International Sociological Association executive board meeting, and the person was from Sweden, where I am now. And she was very upset one day, and I asked her what was wrong, and she told me she had to quit her job, and I thought she had a terminal illness, or her parents did, and instead, we're talking about mandatory retirement. The country had, if you reached a certain age, that you would have to retire. Mandatory retirement, as it says here, sometimes referred to as forced, enforced, statutory, or compulsory retirement. It's an age when you have to quit. And sometimes it's very difficult to see if a country has that, because what it might do is allow organizations to put whatever age they want in place. So they'll tell you they don't have mandatory retirement, but it's the custom. In other places it's there, but people don't like to use that word. Oh, it's not really that. We give a good pension so they have an opportunity. It's not mandatory retirement. So you can call it what you want, but by setting an age, you have a barrier for people for exception. If we talk about why it is there's ageism in so many other countries, one of them is if you have something like this and you are being told that you have to retire at a certain age, some people will think there must be something wrong with everybody, because why would you say that everybody has to retire at a certain age? It's a human rights issue. Our esteemed leader said that he wanted us to talk about successful examples. This is not exactly a successful example. What I would want to tell you, though, is when I looked at this in Iceland, what was interesting is I could get all the email addresses from everybody that was in their parliament, the all thingy. So I sent it to everybody, what I'd written to everybody in the parliament. And some of them asked to meet with me. And because of all of this, I was asked to be on a national television show, which was their most important political show. I'd like to tell you it's because of the importance of the topic. It wasn't. It was because it was a slow news day. They had expected something else to be happening. It didn't happen, so I was probably second best, but it's okay. The point is, I don't consider that we've moved anywhere to be able to do something about this, but you have noticed much more attention is being paid to the topic, not for the human rights element of it. It's being paid attention to because people have noticed the fertility rates have gone down. There are not enough people to support the pension systems they have in place. So we're sneaking in here. It may be for the wrong reasons to move things forward, but there is some movement. I can't say it's because sociologists or the kind of work we're doing, but I like to say we contribute to it, which is why I want to point you to this last point. The UN Convention for the Rights of Older Persons. They always say persons, not people, to make it individual. For 14 years, the General Assembly had put a group in place, a working group, that was supposed to come up with a draft convention, a treaty for the rights of older people, and they never were able to do it. Why weren't they able to do it? Because there's a lot of division about it. Some people don't realize that a lot of people who've reached a certain age still function perfectly well. They want to only talk about the needy people. We're all going to be needy at some point in our life, but nobody can predict that it's at some particular age that that's what your situation's going to be. If you're interested in this, the International Sociological Association is now, for the next couple of years, a member of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Older People. I've given you the name and the website if you want to take a look at that to see what's going on in this area. And I also want to mention that the Human Rights Council in Geneva has just put in place a resolution to open up this again. So for 14 years, the General Assembly had this working group, never could do it. The question is, will we be able to get something out of the Human Rights Council in Geneva? I'd like to see sociologists and the work we're doing part of that effort. Please join me if you're interested in this topic. Thank you very much. I'm sorry to rush this through, but I want to make sure we have enough time for everybody to talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Jan Mary French ma'am, for your very crispy informations on your topic on the human rights and addressing the mandatory policies and with regards to how the Geneva is working and how the human rights ideas being mandate for the international community. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your
Sure.
insightful points within a very shorter time due to the paucity of time. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So may I invite the second speaker of the session, Professor Dina Udis, ma'am, please. Professor Dina, ma'am.
I'm just struggling to get my screen to share. Okay.
Yeah, please, ma'am, please. And
Sorry about that. I'll
yes,
do it as quickly as I can.
okay. Can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the meantime, I'm really delighted to welcome the distinguished participants who join us, Professor Sari Hanafi sir and Professor R.B. Bahat and other distinguished participants who have joined us.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, yes, sir. Everyone.
Can you all see my screen?
Yes, ma'am, please. Yes, ma'am. It's visible.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I will be talking about how clinical sociology can help us understand and support whistleblowers and promote social justice in the workplace. This presentation explores whistleblowing not only as a personal act, but as a social phenomenon with broader implications. And for those purposes, I think in order to start, I need to look at what the essence of whistleblowing is. In South Africa, whistleblowing has become sort of like an everyday topic, but it might not be the same in the rest of the world. So when we're talking about whistleblowing, we're talking about a person within an organization reporting perceived wrongdoing to someone who can act on it. And typically, this person is an insider with privileged access to information. The core motivation is to prevent harm to the public interest, and it reflects a conflict between moral responsibility and institutional loyalty. Now, I approach whistleblowing by looking at it by employing C. Wright Mills's sociological imagination. And C. Wright Mills reminds us that to understand personal troubles, we must see their connection to broader public issues. And I consider whistleblowing an excellent example of this duality. So Why is whistleblowing a private trouble? Whistleblowers often face serious personal consequences. These could include job loss, career stagnation, and financial hardship. Psychologically, many may suffer anxiety, depression, and loss of self-esteem. Their workplace and personal relationships can be damaged, and family dynamics may be strained. And this basically has to do with the fact that whistleblowers, in more cases than one would have expect, suffers retaliation within the workplace and even outside the workplace because of blowing the whistle. But whistleblowing is also a public issue. On the organizational level, whistleblowing can expose systemic problems. It highlights management failure, poor communication, and ethical lapses. The organization's reputation and internal trust are often affected. Therefore, it's not just a personal decision, but one that reflects institutional shortcomings. And then this reporting of organizational wrongdoing also demonstrates organizational wrongdoing as a public issue. Now, there are various stakeholders that are involved in the issue of whistleblowing. The whistleblower, co-workers, management, regulators, and the public. And on this slide, I actually give an indication of the ways in the specific interest of specific stakeholders in the whole whistleblowing process. And it shows that the interests often conflict, that and therefore whistleblowing creates complex dynamics. And as a clinical sociology, it's important during the analysis and developing the interventions that we must acknowledge and navigate these tensions thoughtfully. Now, I'm going to skip this slide because Jan has already explained what clinical sociology is all about. And what I'm focusing on is looking at how, as a clinical sociologist, I can assist whistleblowers and organizations to deal with the private troubles and public issues that follow the act of whistleblowing. What is important is that the resilience of the whistleblower needs to be built up. So supporting whistleblowers requires attention to their physical, mental, emotional, and social resilience, as is indicated on this slide. So this includes providing access to mental health support, peer support networks, and legal advice, and empowering individuals throughout the process is crucial. And what I'm showing on this slide is just basically throughout the whistleblowing process, because whistleblowing is not just an act, it's a process. There's a pre-disclosure phase, there's during the disclosure process and the post-disclosure phase. And there are different levels of support, what we call offensive support, where institutions and clinical sociologists and so on help the whistleblowers, assist the whistleblowers in doing the public exposure of whistleblowing. There is the social support mechanisms that are needed, where there are different levels of support that whistleblowers need during the disclosure process. And there are the post-disclosure support once the retaliation starts, once they've made the disclosure and the retaliation starts, which could include legal support, financial security, protection of the whistleblower identity, and strengthening of the whistleblower agency. And it's important to keep in mind that while we've distinguished between these three types of support, or three levels of support, they are not necessarily only involved in pre-disclosure or during disclosure or post-disclosure. There's a potential for the different levels of support to be needed in different phases. But apart from building the resilience of the individual whistleblower, it's also important to build organizational resilience. And there it is important to look at the structure of the organization to look at the strategy and to look at the culture and to ensure that the structure, strategy, and culture ensures that the people who are form the organization, that they can deal with problems that they face and can respond to it in a positive way. And in order to achieve organizational resilience, it's important to ensure that there's organizational justice that organizational justice is achieved in the organization. And there, the distinction that I make, that is generally made, is between distributive justice, procedural justice, and interactional justice. And I will just look at how whistleblowing influences each of these. So procedural justice refers to whether fair processes are in place for disclosures. And there, what is needed within the organizations is that there should be mechanisms to disclose, there should be ways to respond, procedures for responding to disclosures, procedures for investigating disclosures, and procedures for detailing access to resources. Then the distributive justice component has to do with whether the outcomes of the whistleblowing is fair, whether there's freedom of expression, whether there's good governance and compliance, whether a positive and ethical work environment is created, and most importantly, whether wrongdoing is eliminated or at least reduced. Then there's interactional justice, and this distinguishes between interpersonal, whether people are treated with respect, and informational, whether information is transparently shared. In the case of interpersonal justice, it entails that whistleblowers should receive positive treatment during and after the disclosure, that there should be a supportive management culture and a climate of trust, and that the whistleblowers blowing the whistle should be seen not as an act of disloyalty, but as an act of rational loyalty. In other words, that the whistleblower is actually complying with the values of the organization. For informational justice, it's important that there should be access to information, feedback about the progress of investigation, and about available resources, so that there is an accountable organization established. Now, for whistleblowing to be constructive, the culture of organizations often have to change. So organizations must treat whistleblowing as rational loyalty, not betrayal. And it's necessary to build a culture of trust, transparency, and mutual respect, so that the organization prioritizes the public interest, rather than the organizational reputation and advantage. In order to build organizational wrongdoing, it is important that we look at what we understand under organizational wrongdoing resilience. And organizational resilience means responding constructively to disclosures. This includes confidential reporting channels and clear investigation procedures. And what is core to this is that the dignity of all stakeholders should be recognized in order to build trust and credibility within the organization. In conclusion, to empower whistleblowers, we need to focus on empowering the whistleblowers and the systems around them. And support here includes strengthening individual resilience, enhancing organizational justice, and civil society involvement. We must also push for better legal protection of whistleblowers, and by addressing whistleblowing as both a personal and public issue, we foster a culture of accountability and integrity. So in closing, I would just like to say that whistleblowers can be catalysts for justice and integrity in the workplace, and clinical sociology gives us the tools to understand and support them meaningfully. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Professor Tamil has told me to take the lead now. So we have two more speakers today. We have Professor Ima Porio. She's a professor in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, School of Social Sciences in Manila University, and a science research fellow with the Manila Observatory. Besides holding various prestigious positions, she has been the president of the International Sociological Association's Clinical Sociology Division. I welcome Emma, and we have with us the next speaker, Yvonne Wissing, who is a clinical sociologist and a founding director of the Center for Childhood and Youth Study at CIS in USA, where she's a professor of healthcare studies. She has authored more than 25 books and has held various prestigious positions. As the time is short, so I'm cutting short the introduction. I welcome the speakers, and now I invite Professor Emma to kindly speak on her topic, climate justice, environment, and community resilience. Over to you, Professor Emma.
I'm having a hard time. Okay. Can you see my screen? But I do not know
Yes,
where.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Your screen is visible, but
Okay. All right. Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. It is my privilege to share with you today what we do here at the coastal cities at risk in the Philippines under the office of the president of the Ateneo de Manila University. Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines is a consortium of scientists, professionals, and practitioners from the Ateneo de Manila University, Manila Observatory, and our implementing partner, the National Resilience Council. I am the principal investigator and project leader of this. Title of my presentation is Bridging Science Policy Practice Nexus in the Philippines, Investing in Climate and Disaster Resilience for Climate Justice. The twin crises of our time, social inequality and increasing poverty. The IPCC report, Somali for Positive Mayors 2022, said that the crisis is really reaching its crucial level because increasing poverty levels widens inequality and creating new vulnerabilities. And these twin crises of our time have intensified vulnerability among those already marginal and disadvantaged communities. If you see here the disaster related map, the Philippines is a big black blob there. And you can see this. In the world, also in the World Risk Index, the Philippines has been topping the risk index since 2022. But if you would like, this figure here is indicative. If you look at the first top 15 countries with highest exposure vulnerability, Philippines is number 3 and Japan is number 4. But if you move to the top 15 countries with highest vulnerability, Philippines and Japan is not there. It's not anymore there. But then when you look at the top 15 countries with highest risk worldwide, risk being a function of hazard, exposure, and vulnerability over capacity, its resilience, you will see that Philippines is still there, but Japan is not there anymore. Japan has become number 17. So I always tell my students and my audience, what makes a difference? It is the investment in building adaptive and coping capacities and reduces the vulnerability and exposure of people. If you look at also at the top global risks by severity, we have climate action failure, extreme weather, biodiversity loss, social cohesion erosion, and livelihood crisis. So these are the things that we really have to worry about. Also, in my part of the world, 90% of regional greenhouse gas emissions come from Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, and the like. The past 3 decades really pushes us to reframe the problematic in terms of climate, environment, economy, development, social transformations, because nearly disasters have nearly doubled for the past few decades, increasing damages and losses. And it really, I would say, forced us to recast how we should do our work, social scientists, as physical scientists, as professionals and the like. And I would argue that we need to naturalize the social sciences while we have to socialize and humanize the natural sciences so that we can become problem focused, solutions driven with a systems lens in the way we organize our work and in the way we examine and design our interventions. If you look at what's happening now, we really would say that the increasing development and modernization increases climate and disaster risk, as well as the impacts already highly vulnerable communities, social and physical infrastructures, economy, livelihoods, increasing damage and losses to lives and assets, and also compromise their search for a better life. I'd say that we need really to focus. We need to focus on building our resilience, and so that it will enhance our efforts towards environmental and social inequality, reduce vulnerability to our people, and increase our coping capacity. In this part two, I'd like to look at what I call our innovations for adaptive and transformative climate justice and resilience, our proactive approaches to climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction, and building community resilience among peoples and communities. Our strategy as a group, I lead this group of 15 scientists, is really to institutionalize the resilience agenda vertically, horizontally, and intersectionally at the local level with universities, LGUs, and Resilience Council, at the national level, regional, and global level through our transit action research, tools, partnerships, networks, and coalitions. We need to bridge science, policy, practice nexus through the three principles of transdisciplinary action research. Number one, we should co-produce our knowledge with stakeholders, co-create. If we do co-generate our knowledge stakeholders, it builds our capacities as professionals, practitioners, scientists, leading to co-ownership and benefits, and leading to co-stewardship. This is our theoretical lens for transformation in terms of moving science to climate action. I would say anchored on the 6 conditions of systems change. How do you change? Through policies, practices, resource flows, anchored on relationships, connections, and power dynamics, mindsets, or habits. We basically, what we did is we insert this into the local planning, development planning. Our goal really is to insert climate disaster risk assessments and risk profiles into integrating it to the local planning systems. So, for example, the climate disaster risk assessment should update the local climate adaptation plan, and with participation of people and communities and policymakers. It should update the land use plans, the annual investment plan, and the programs, plans, and policies. So if you do that, then you should be able to change the way planning takes place, that takes into consideration participation of people. We created 2 kinds of adaptation, what we call incremental adaptation, that doesn't really change the system. So we have resilience innovations in solar panels, solar power potable water system, art as a strategic pathway for risk and resilience communication. So for example, since 2018, every conference I have is always organized with an exhibit, because an exhibit communicates more effectively to people, ordinary people. We have also integrated really gender as a mobilizing force and creating changes at the communities. This one is in Iloilo City, and then also we have worked with several communities, community groups, women-led groups on community-based arts for resilience. But we're really moving science to anticipatory climate action through transformative. I think this is the most important one, that it is transformative and contextually driven innovations anchored on underlying social relationships of power, centering on values of justice, equity, and inclusion for humans and non-humans. And we invite everybody to be inspired, to act, to reimagine, and act for the greater good. So we can change the scale and depth of the adaptation, and contextually driven at this towards just adaptation. So I will not go fast because I don't have much time, but these are the innovations we did in Metro Manila in terms of creating actionable science for decision makers through data sets and models. We unpack resilience at a programmatic level, at the national, local, and the community level, guided by transdisciplinary intersectionality. And basically, in terms of created champions for resilience and through public-private people partnerships. We were here in 3 cities since 2018. You can see here on the right part, we were handing over our risk maps to the local mayor in partnership with the president of the Ateneo of the local university and scientists. Here on the other side, here our last one, we had a signing off with the city in the south, Mandawi, and I will not go fast. I think I can share with you my PowerPoints, but this is our focus now. We're really creating, we say, anticipatory climate and disaster resilience technologies for the next generation of cascading disasters. So we anchor it on what we call the fuse nexus: food, energy, water. This is really a lesson of the Typhoon Rai in my province. We're in the richest province. After 3 days, there was 3 lines: energy lines, food lines, and water lines. As I always tell people, you can live without food for 40 days, but not without water after 4 days. So it's anchored on the basic needs of the people on the ground, pre-disaster, disaster, and post-disaster. We have been deploying a lot of anticipatory technologies for climate actions all over the country in partnership with the Ateneo Innovation Center. This is where, we work in different parts of the country, but I would really like to focus on our complementation of leadership governance training modules with science and technology. Science and technology is supplied by Manila Observatory and Ateneo Manila scientists on systems thinking, solutions-driven research tools, and the right systems tools. And then on the left side, you'll see that the training for resilience leadership, organizing for resilience, and coalition building and practicum and coaching is done. And so risk and resilience strategies and investment are combined through the leadership competency profile, risk analysis, and resilience scorecards. These are our resilience scorecards, which we really we say that you can have a resilient LGU system if you invest on leadership and governance or resiliency, anchored on empowered stakeholders and integration of planning and development. And then the 4 pillars of resilience: human development, sustainable local economy, infrastructure, environment sustainability. If you invest in all this, it will result in reduction of damages and losses, resiliency, and development continuity. These are energies in terms of integrating SDG innovations in the city through the local plans up to the regional development plans. We basically believe that, in the 4 principles. Number 1, the Pareto principle: 20% input, 80% output. But as I tell the mayors and governors, it seems the other way around. You have 80% input and you have 20% output, if at all. In fact, I always tell them, Philippines is a nation of successful pilot projects. You go back after 5 years, maybe the mayor has changed, the barangay captain has died, whatever. Number 2, there's power in numbers. But I also believe, as I told the 15 to 20 scientists that I led since 2018, that to innovate is to collaborate. But to collaborate is also to navigate the intra and inter systems within and without that you engage. This is an example of what we did. We translated down to the barangay level the whole of society approach in developing a resilient community program, engaging everybody from the academia, the private sector, the youth, the local councils, and the like. This is an example of our engagement after we engage in the cities in their planning. We work with them so that it is participatory, it is engaging, and really invest on reducing the exposure and vulnerability. So we say, okay, if this is your risk profile, who is highly exposed, who is vulnerable, and what are kinds of investments that you should do. This is my team. I have a team of international advisors, pool of experts, council of advisors, and we have our partnerships with different cities. And this is our last major conference wherein we have technologies for anticipatory action, and also we have innovations for climate and disaster resilience exhibit and conference. And we find that it's very easy to translate science and technology if it's in figures, it's drawings, and the like. So this is my former co-principal investigator who became the Secretary of National Defense, and many others. This is our presidents and our local mayors and policymakers and the like. My message to clinical, applied, and public sociologists, professionals, and practitioners of the world: if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far and farther, go together. So that's the end of my slide. Thank you very much. I hope I didn't go so much time.
Thank you, Professor Emma, for such a comprehensive presentation, and you shared how you are working for community resilience and climate justice and environment. Thank you for your presentation. We move to the next speaker, Professor Yvonne Wissing, Professor Salem State University, USA. Welcome, Professor Wissing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I won't take much time, so I welcome you again. Over to you.
Well, thank you so very much for allowing me to be a part of this wonderful panel of speakers. My work will be in directly building on what Emma has so brilliantly had to share with us. I'm going to be looking at this issue of housing distress, its causes, impacts, and what can be done. So we have learned, especially through COVID, that homelessness is another pandemic. And my work focuses on homeless and housing distressed young people in particular. And they, I think, are the most vulnerable group, and we really need to address their needs. Now, we know that housing distress and homelessness is a global phenomenon, but this map shows that it is not found everywhere. And it is the red links are the ones where there's the highest amount. And as you will notice, like the Scandinavian countries don't have very much homelessness, but there are other areas of the world that do. So looking at the data, which is a gift of researchers and the field of sociology, we know that we use different methodologies. We use different kinds of definitions of what is homelessness and housing distress. We report them to different vehicles, and as a result, we really don't have a very good handle on how much homelessness actually occurs. We know that, for instance, data from France would indicate that you have about 300 of every 100,000 people are homeless, but fewer than 20 in Finland. Finland is the world's model in terms of how to address homelessness. I think whatever number you have is always a gross underestimation of how much actually exists. So when we look at this definitional issue, is it sleeping on a park bench? Is it couch surfing? Is it the people who drop in to stay with you for long periods of time. We know that we're talking about people of all ages, all types. We're looking at children, we're looking at babies, we're looking at families, we're looking at older people. They live in tents, they live in makeshift shelters, and they are on the streets. And we also want to consider that the animal family is part of us and that they get homeless too. And where do we put them? And many shelters will not allow pets to come with them. And they're a lifeline for people. We know that many shelters will not allow you to bring your entire family. They may be designed for individuals. If you are a family and you have a male, especially a young man, a boy who is in your family, they may not allow them because of reasons of concerns of sexual abuse. So if we look at the causation of housing distress and homelessness, we know that it is not one thing. Another example of our multivariate analysis, right? And we are looking at issues of economic, personal, and circumstantial data. This model by Diane Nyland looks at some of the many components that contribute to homelessness. If we are looking at economic issues, we know that poverty is the major contributing factor, and unemployment or not being paid adequately for the work that you do. Not being able to afford food. And this goes to look at the quality of food and water and air. We're looking at the issues of political will and political and social factors that pertain to laws, policies, practices, and funding. We're looking at issues of health. Do people have the opportunity to pay for health? Is it available? We're looking at family issues like the lack of childcare. We're looking at caregiver support. We're looking at Jen's work on retirement. Can people work? We're looking at the incidence of trauma, violence, and abuse. And all of these get exacerbated when we are under natural disasters, climate problems that Emma talked about. We are looking at how these impact our mental health and our use of substances. Or even our ability to be violent. And I think that often mental illness and substance abuse are thought as the causal factors for homelessness, but I would allege that they are usually outcomes of housing distress, that if you were in stable housing, you probably would not have those other kind of social problems. My work on housing distress with young people, we need to realize that they're under significant pressure and they're confronted with violence in the community and in the family. We're talking about people who are living in poverty, that they are put in positions where they're confronted with national disasters, climate change, and war. If they have inadequate opportunities for education and healthcare, they want to seek a better life. And so they are on the move. If we look at this map briefly, the countries that are in red are those that are the most poverty stricken, on less than $2 a day. The green countries fare better. We know that there are over 7 billion people on Earth right now, and half of them are living on less than $2.50 a day. Of the 2 billion children in the world, about half, or 1 billion, live in poverty. The UNICEF data indicates that about 18 children die every minute. And so as we've been sitting here, we can only generalize about how many children have passed away because of poverty. And as we look again on the environmental issues that are so important, that we're talking about a variety of things, aren't we? We're talking about extreme heat. We're talking about extreme cold. We're talking about wind and fire and droughts, earthquakes. The impact of climate change has a direct relationship to situations of housing distress and poverty. There are all kinds of ecological determinants of health, and these impact our our housing, our work, our education, our healthcare. And so ultimately, we're looking at then trauma, we're looking at malnutrition, we're looking at the need to flee. Many areas around the world have inadequate education. And again, here we have a map where the green countries are providing better education for the masses than the countries that are in the yellow, orange, and red category. Healthcare alone is a significant problem. Physical healthcare, emergency healthcare, mental healthcare, all of these are significantly at risk. Right? We've seen that through COVID, the comorbidity between illness, housing distress, poverty are all interrelated. And so what we know is that homelessness exacerbated it as much as 50% in many parts of the world. And many of the people have not resolved from it. If you've lost your house through climate change, through a flood, a fire, you are still in many ways years later unable to get back to your housing stability. So poverty creates this cycle, right? And so if you are in a family that's precariously economically stable, then you are having children who will grow up in poverty. And if they do not have adequate access to education, to healthcare, to opportunities, it creates a cycle where you have to try to get out. And young people are trying to get out. And if we look at this grid of data from UNICEF, Africa and Latin America are the primary areas where young people are on the move, trying to get out. And we see the yellow grid on children, and then the pink grid being people 15 to 24. So you have a significant number of children that are on the move and that they are unaccompanied when they go places, and that they may be with families, but how are they being handled within the country? Are they being separated, or families able to stay together? We need to realize that getting out and thus being homeless can be a logical choice because young people are smart. They've learned to read the writing on the wall, that they need to do better and that they want to do better. And so moving may be a way for them to create this better life, but are agencies, our organizations and communities able to manage it? And in many ways, no. Go back. We know that as a clinical sociologist, one of the most important things is to have housing. It is a protective factor. If you have stable housing, you are safe. You can sleep. You can be clean. You have a place to store food. You can cook. You can go to a regular school that is nearby. You can get a job and be stable. All right. You have transportation. All of these factors keep a person safe. But if you don't have stable housing, it is putting you at terrible risk for all kinds of difficulties. When you live with other people, there's instability. If you are in a shelter, a residential facility, a detainment center, a jail, if you are a foster child, all of these things may give you a place to sleep. It may give you food, but it's not a home. And so we're talking about then all of the stress that puts people at risk and add into war, natural disasters. All of these are risk factors because we are now not suffering from one crisis. We are suffering from global and personal polycrises. So young people today are impacted by multiple personal and global crises, from environment, war, conflict in the home, conflict in the community or the nation, inequality socially and economically. And we're seeing then that young people are trying to survive so that they flee. Families are fleeing, trying to get to a better place, and their journeys are hard. that often in the issue of housing distress, people are confronted with violence at home, violence on the street, violence with people who are supposed to be your caregivers. They can be robbed. They are harassed, manipulated. They may be separated from their family and friends in their home and their community. They are living with uncertainty and fear. They may not have adequate health care, that the cost physically, emotionally, and financially are significant. People are tired, they're exhausted, that they're not sleeping, that they have inadequate food, water, and bathing facilities, things that mattered to them, the few possessions that they have. And whether we're talking about a refugee or whether we're talking about a family having to be transient, moving from one place in one community to another to find housing, your possessions get lost or destroyed. Everything gets shifted up. When you are going to ask people for help, either you are going to be confronted with an organized or a disorganized system. If it's organized, is it friendly or is it scary? Are we being confronted with people who are helpful, who are providing social services and food and healthcare, or are we being putting homeless people in contact with the police and in jails and in detention centers? If it's disorganized, which housing distress often is for individual, you're on your own. There's no guidance. The networking is informal. You're asking people on the street for information, and they may not be the best informants. They're scrambling to survive. This thrusts people into the underworld, which puts them at more risk of violence, of exploitation, of criminal behavior. Now we know.
Ma'am, sorry to interfere, ma'am. Ma'am, can you come to the end, ma'am? Because we have a paucity of time, then another 10 minutes.
Oh, that's fine. I did calculate my time ahead of
Yes,
time.
sorry. Because we start a little late. Because of our timing, we start a little late. That it comes according. Okay. Yes,
Yes, well,
please.
I timed and I was at 15 minutes. So
Okay.
we
Yes,
picked
yes,
the
please,
bottom line.
please.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So as a clinical sociologist, we have to look at our community's commitment to prevention, identification. We have to look at whether we have a paucity view or an abundance view. If it's a paucity view, it's that we don't really have enough for all of us, so we're going to prioritize who we're going to care for. And this NIMBY approach of not in my backyard and sending homeless people to somewhere else is a very common response, as opposed to an abundance view that says we do have resources. It is a matter of identifying how to link people up to them. We have a variety of community structures. We are sociologists. We understand the value of social structure. We need to identify what the gaps are, see what resources we have, find the partnerships to address them, to look at this intersection of all of our social institutions, and are people a priority. And the Convention on the Rights of the Child gives a clear set of guidelines of how all children should be cared for, no matter who they are or where they are. And the articles here you can take a look at. In particular, Article 27 looks at the right to housing. Right. And again, the sustainable goals are important, but we know that real justice for children and with children can only be achieved when children are treated as equals and are provided with the opportunities to work in partnership with the adults who are obligated to care for them. If you do not invest in them, it is no surprise what's going to happen. It does not take a crystal ball to know what's going to happen to children's physical, mental, cognitive, social health, and their ability to be the leaders of the community. We know what to do. And so thank you very much. I'm always happy to help.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Young Gising. It's a very wonderful topic, as that's a burning issue, the homelessness that you have been discussed. Really is very interesting, and I hope all the participants also will agree with me. And now, shall we move to the next sessions, and shall we invite Professor John Mary Fritz in the process of certification and accreditations process. I request Professor Jean-Marie Fritz, Professor, University of Cincinnati, distinguished visiting professor of University of Johannesburg, and currently visiting professor of Bosala University, to proceed her the presentation on certification and accreditations. Please, madam. So over to you, ma'am. Please.
Thank you. We talked about having this whole session. We decided that might be at least a good thing to bring up a couple possibilities that you might want to consider. And one is certification as a clinical sociologist or applied sociologist, and the other is if your program is at an undergraduate or a graduate level, getting the program certified. I'm going to talk about the certification, individual certification, and Tina will be talking about your programs and how they can be accredited. First thing, this is something that's offered by the Association for Applied and Clinical Sociology. And while it's based in the United States, it does have a lot of international members, some of them because they're very interested in this process. It says here in the beginning, certification indicates you have background, current practice, attitudes, ethics, skills that have been examined by other certified professionals in your discipline. It doesn't mean they're talking about how much they like you or that they have to agree with everything that you do. But these are people, you have submitted material, they've looked it over, there is an interview that you give to them, and they make a decision about whether you're paying attention to what's known, how you're treating people, how things are moving forward. If you're interested in that, or even if you don't feel you're qualified at this point, it might be something you want to do in the future. So who's eligible to do this? Practicing sociologists have to have a master's or a doctoral degree, so there's no certification at this point for somebody with a bachelor's level, only at master's or doctorate. And they talk here about number of hours or having worked full time. Sometimes people take a job where that's their whole job, and so if you've done that for a considerable period of time, that's enough. For other people, for instance me, I have been a mediator for 25 years, but I've never worked full time as a mediator. I don't have to wait 25 years to get certified, but it means I've had enough practice and enough background to be able to go through that process. So I'm certified actually in the area of organizational development. That's what I chose to do at the time rather than mediation. But master's level, doctoral level, you could have an interdisciplinary degree if it had enough sociology base to it. That might also fit. And I will be talking about how you find out about all these things in a minute. 1 second here. Levels and areas of practice. For those of you who know about clinical sociology, we always talk about levels, working individual, small group, family, organization, community, national, international, global, and you may work at one level only, that's fine, or you may work at several levels, but it's one of the things that you would identify the people going through, what are the levels that you're working at or level for certification possibilities. What about the topics that you work on? Well, I think we maybe in the beginning thought there would be a certain number of topics. Over time, we've begun to realize people have all kinds of interests. Sometimes they were interested in how animals were treated. Sometimes they're interested in things you would think about, like environmental justice. Environmental justice is a good example because it's at all those levels that I talked about. Your country might have rules about it, which you're having to take into consideration when you're working. Talking about this is normal for me because I worked for 6 years on the advisory committee to the Environmental Protection Agency on environmental justice. Under the current administration, we have somebody who's running a rogue government. He has gotten rid of all of the environmental justice considerations, so you don't have to worry about that so much nationally or on your community level anymore. You just have to worry, how am I going to get my community activated to say that we need something done like we were promised to do in the past. But in general, if you're working in a country where things are sort of stable, you have some knowledge of what the national, local, community rules are, and also what the needs are of the people in your community, so several levels. Cost. Applicants have to be members of the association. Actually, the association cost isn't so high, and they do have considerations for people that come from a range of different countries. So that is something you would talk with Krista Jane Moore, Dr. Moore, who is in Virginia. I've given her email address here, and I want to tell you that even though I've gone over this whole thing here, that the Association for Applied and Clinical Sociology, that's aacsnet.net, you can easily find this information on the internet. So just go for the Association for Applied and Clinical Sociology. The opening page will give you much of the same information that I've given here. And then there are some attached pages which are much more specific about what you need to turn in and how you do things. I said there was an interview involved in the process, but they understand that a lot of times international people can't come somewhere for an interview. So the review committee makes decisions, but has offered in the past for people who are in places that make it difficult to come to the US to do it, to do something on a Zoom where you would do the presentation and the committee would assess it. Again, any questions that you have, please contact Krista Moore. You will find that several of us that are on this panel today are certified. I'm a certified clinical sociologist. Why would I want to do that? Maybe in some sectors they are not used to sociologists actually doing something, so it gives you a credential to identify that somebody, not just you, but in the discipline, has seen this as something that we do. If you have questions, please contact me at jan.fritz@uc.edu. I'm easily to find on the internet, or contact Krista Moore. And again, the information for Krista will be on the Association for Applied and Clinical Sociology website. Thank you for giving me the time to talk about certification.
Thank you so much, Professor Jan Marie Fritz, ma'am. It's very interesting, actually, as for the proposed idea of the International Sociological Associations, that what we have this in the webinar, it's more on the application of sociology and how the applications and that's applied more and clinical form, and where really that we are being interested to be put your attentions to be made how sociology being in the practical field of an applications and clinical sociology, that you have been given the certifications, how your professionals can have a certifications to be more with. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your wonderful insight full on the descriptions on how your sociologist can become as a certified person in the clinical field and applied sociology. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for your. Thank you, madam. Thank you. So, may I invite Professor Dina Udes, ma'am, a professor from the University of Johannesburg, to do her presentations on the certification and accreditations as part of international accreditations for the program in applied and clinical sociology. I invite ma'am, Professor Dina Udes. Over to you, ma'am, please.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about accreditation. Now, Jan spoke about certification of individual sociologists and related disciplines. What I'm talking about is the accreditation of sociology programs. And the organization that is responsible for accrediting sociology programs is called CAPAX. It stands for the Commission for the Accreditation of Programs in Applied and Clinical Sociology. And that is why we're talking about this in this session, because this deals with applied and clinical sociology programs and how you could, what the importance is of accreditation for programs. Now, we started considering applying for accreditation at my university and in my department, because we realized that our students actually need to see some value in applying their sociological knowledge outside of academia, because we have large numbers of students, even postgraduate students, and the focus traditionally of sociology tended to be on creating academics and researchers within academia, and we felt that we need to look at how sociology can also be used within the field outside of academia. So what I want to concentrate on is critical aspects to consider when pursuing CAPAC's accreditation for your program. And what I would like to do is to emphasize the value of aligning sociological practice programs with global accreditation standards. Now, in this process, I'm looking at various issues. I'm going to consider how accreditation offers credibility and opens opportunities for institutions, students, and the profession, and that there are practical challenges, how accreditation works with CAPACs, differences in academic calendars across countries, terminology and program structures that can vary if you program outside of the USA and now you're applying for accreditation, which was the case with us, and the fees, how the fees are adjusted for international economies. So let's first look at the value of accreditation to the public. And here I want to argue that that accreditation shows the public that programs are regularly and externally reviewed, and it helps identify programs that voluntarily pursue quality improvement, and it also encourages better services for society and reduces government oversight. There are also particular values for students, that accreditation assures students of high quality, relevant education. It supports their professional identity and ability to pursue careers in sociological practice, and it enhances the job market access through practical experiences. It also has some value for the institution or the program itself, because it encourages internal reflection and ongoing improvement of the program. It improves the enrollment rate by demonstrating the value of following a particular program. Accreditation also builds the institution's reputation, and at my university that is quite an important issue that they put a lot of emphasis on. And it facilitates resource allocation from university leadership and to help increase enrollment. It also has value to the discipline because it engages practitioners in setting educational standards. It also strengthens unity within the discipline, and it makes sociology more action-oriented and relevant to social problems. So it demonstrates the use value of sociology. Next, I would just like to talk briefly about how accreditation works in CAPACs. There are a set of standards, and those standards there are different standards for undergraduate, MA, and doctoral programs. And these standards are based on learning outcomes. So what the standards do is they look at key learning outcomes in terms related to sociological theory, to knowledge, to methods, to skills and professional orientation, and to ethics. And it also incorporates the requirement that students must have a meaningful practice experience, such as an internship. So accreditation is a type of periodic program review. It happens, my department has just gone through the re-accreditation process, and you can get accreditation. Full accreditation is, I think, a maximum of 7 years, and we have now received that accreditation after the re-accreditation process. So what is needed is to demonstrate that there are adequate administrative structures and resources to support the teaching, research, and experiential learning of the students. And then in going through this whole accreditation process, it also helps to ensure that the programs are adequately funded and staffed. So the accreditation process is based upon a program self-study. You first submit, you apply to for accreditation, that you want to go through the process of education. Then you complete a self-study in line with the standards. And then once the self-study has been approved by CAPAC's board, a site visit is organized to come and talk to people. Now, people might think we in different countries, our systems are different, and we had the same thing in South Africa, but we found CAPAC's very accommodating in helping us translate South African concepts into American concepts and help CAPACs understand. Because, for example, we call grades marks, and grading is called marking. And for us, assessment is for students, and quality assurance is assessment for programs. So we call assessment for programs, in terms of the American system, quality assurance at UJ and in South Africa general. And we also have different things about the faculty. You know, we talk about a faculty of humanities, so it's the institution, the organization, whereas not, but we talk about professors and lecturers and so on. And we often call courses modules. So we had to figure out how all these things work. And there's also something like the academic cycles and calendar years that had to be considered when you're doing does your calendar year accommodate what is happening in the US. And what we have done is CAPACs was willing to accommodate us to use the calendar year, which is the academic year in South Africa, rather than the American system. So I've already said that the standards allow for accreditation for undergraduate, master's, and doctoral programs. We applied for accreditation for a BA honors degree, which in South Africa is considered a postgraduate degree. But because it is a 4th year of study, preceding the MA, that you have to complete an honors to do an MA, CAPACs decided that we could apply for an undergraduate program, for an undergraduate program, because our BA degree is only 3 years, and and we had to look at the concentrations and designations, how it was. Okay, issues that need to be considered in terms of this is faculty workload. There are a lot of issues with regard to faculty workload, and thinking about how to make this as easy as possible, because preparing documents for accreditation is a significant task, and it is important you can get templates from or examples from CAPACs, and CAPACs can assist you in clarifying requirements, but it's important that there should be a champion, that you get buy-in from the faculty, that you appoint someone to assist with drafting of the self-study report, and that you align existing documents with requirements of CAPAC standards, and get the involvement of other divisions of the university to assist you in the process. Just briefly talk about financing. CAPAC has also accommodated, in line with what the ISA does, also accommodated different requirements for different programs depending on the country in which they're based, whether they're category A or category B or category C. And I must generally say, those of you who have experience of accreditation in other contexts will realize that the accreditation fees of CAPACs is actually relatively reasonable. Then in conclusion, I would just like to reaffirm the value and feasibility of CAPAC's accreditation for programs. And I think it is also important to emphasize the collaboration that takes place between institutions and the Commission to ensure mutual understanding and success of the accreditation process.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Dina Wiz, for your it's a crystal clear presentation on the part of international accreditations for the program in applied and clinical sociology being offered by the University of Johannesburg. And so you have been clarified then how the CAPAs, so the Commissions for Accreditations Programs in Applied and Clinical Sociology, which works. So you have given a very clear idea about it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentations on this part of certification and accreditations and applied and clinical sociology. Now, I thank all the speakers. Now the session is over. We can have a few minutes for the clarifications. Any participants, if the participants wants to have any clarifications from the speakers, you can feel free to ask any clarification of the questions. The speakers are all being with us now. Now the session is open to the participants to have your clarifications if you need. Please. Participants wanted to have any queries or clarification, feel free to have. Hello? No, if it is no, that you can be chat with the speakers also by the chat, or you can be directly, you can contact over online. So shall we go to the end part of the webinar, ma'am?
Good
Dr.
evening,
Adi,
Dr. Tamarasan, sir.
Yes. Yes.
This is Dr. Kavita.
Yeah, please, ma'am. Yeah.
It's not clarification, sir. Actually,
Yeah,
all
please.
the sessions were very insightful and a new area where the clinical sociology can be discussed and how they can also become the practitioners. Very insightful topics and very insightful discussions we had with the speakers. I have to thank all the speakers as well as Dr. Tamarasan for arranging this webinar, which we have spent this nearly 1.5 hours very useful with with keen attention. I have been listening to all the speakers. Thank you very much for your coordination and the speakers also.
Thank you.
I
Thank
wanted
you,
to
Dr.
mention
Anbu Kavita.
something.
Yeah.
First of all, I wanted to thank all the people that said all those nice things in the chat. How very nice of you to do that. And I'm very pleased to hear what Dr. Kavita has said. I've always hoped that India would be much more involved in the areas that we were talking about, and we're looking further cooperation, particularly after this webinar. I also want to mention that the webinar is being recorded and the ISA will make it available at some point. So if there's something here that you wanted more information about, you'll be able to go back to it. I don't know if anybody has the information about how soon the ISA will release the program, but you do have the option to be able to get it again online after the ISA releases it. And thank you. Thank you also to our conveners. It was very nice of you to bring us all together and to give us the opportunity to talk. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you,
Thank you,
Professor.
ma'am.
Actually,
I have a question.
yeah,
Uh,
please. Yeah, Nayani. Yeah. Yes,
Thank you.
please,
My name is
Nayani,
Nora.
please.
Thank you. This is a wonderful opportunity for every one of us. This connection is very important, especially in the current times. And I really want to thank the presenters and the organizers from the bottom of my heart. My question is regarding homelessness to Professor Vising. Madam, with the current changes that you see happening all around the world, uh, what do you think will be, what do you see as the repercussion for the next 5 years in the field of homelessness and its impact on incarceration in the US? I ask this in context of my research, which is regarding California. So my interest, of course, I have a special interest in California, but the question is a general question. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your concern. You ask a very important question. I think that it is going to increase in the number of homeless people and in the criminalization of it. That thanks to Dr. Fritz, there will be a book for the clinical sociology group coming out that looks at different positive strategies that places can use. So that will be forthcoming. We should have around 15 to 20 chapters looking at this, but it is indeed a significant problem, and the criminalization is only going to make matters worse. The amount of funding cuts by the current political administration is going to make things much worse, and everyone is scrambling, trying to do the best they can. So we could only expect it to be bad, but we as clinical sociologists are trying to help. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you so much, Professor, for your wonderful insights and clarification on the part. I really thank Dr. Anbu Kavita ma'am. Actually, she is working in one of the national institute in India, Chennai, as a National Institute of Rajiv Gandhi National Institute of Youth Development, and Dr. Nayani Basu. So I thank both of you for your insightful questions and clarifications. So any more from the participants, or shall we go to the end part of the session?
Someone has written in the chat that they would like Professor Tina to talk about her area, whistleblowing. So you might look at that question that's in the chat.
Oh, okay. Yes. Oh, yeah. Yes. I still got it. Thank you. So thank you. Any other participants? No more questions, or you can be interact with the speakers over email or the chat too. If no more, just we can go for the end part of the discussion. I think so. I am heartfelt thanks to. Yes, please.
Could I just give a short answer to that question about
please,
the
ma'am.
successful? Because the question asked, could I share any successful case regarding support services for whistleblowers? Now, that is something that we are working on in South Africa. I have Dr. Radulovic, who's actually in the webinar, has been working on it as part of his doctoral studies, as part of his doctorate, and we are still continuing working, looking at ways in which to provide support for whistleblowers. In South Africa, there are a number of civil society organizations who provide support. We would like to see more support from government's side as well, and we're actually recommending that there should be an overarching agency that looks after the interests of whistleblowers and organizations to ensure that wrongdoing is addressed, because that is ultimately what whistleblowers want to do. They want to disclose information about wrongdoing so that something can be done about it. And instead, what often happens is that they suffer retaliation and they lose their careers, not only their jobs, but their careers. So it's important to look at ways in which whistleblowers can be supported and make sure that organizations can become more ethical and accountable, and that wrongdoing is addressed as far as possible.
Thank you, Professor Dina, this for your pinpointed clarifications for the questions raised by Dr. Avin Veronica. She is also a faculty in one of the National Institute in India, Chennai. So, any more clarifications, either by chat or direct? Okay, so if we know shall we go for the end part of the webinar? Yes. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for the wonderful clarifications raised by all the participants. First of all, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the president of an ISA and Professor Alison Mary Laconto, the Vice President Research and International Sociology Association, for taking a wonderful effort to make a research council webinar working group. So because of this international ISA Research Council webinar working group, so this second webinar has become possible, and it's permitted me. I'm really grateful to her for being added me as one of the a member in the research council, ISA Research Council webinar working group. So by the way, that have been granted permissions to be proceed with the topic of that we thought of it and applied and clinical sociology. I'm really thankful. Next to the Professor Jan Mary Fritz, ma'am. So it's very kind enough to be immediately conceptualize the idea, because while I had it with the think of the conceptualizing the theme for the second webinar, and really I received a wonderful help from Professor Jan Mary Fritz, ma'am, and because of she's making me to be work and very faster, quicker to make a conceptualized note with the pertinent topic, because all we know that only the applied sociologies become as an important to go with that. And now, after I have joined with the international sociology community, particularly as an international social association, I have come to know that the sociology being advanced with the level of clinical sociology, and where there is a team of professors like our professors Jan Mary and Fritz and Professor Dina Udain, and all they are working together as an important leaders as promoting supplied and clinical sociology internationally. I'm really so glad and thankful for them. So that is the only thing which made me to be invite all the experts to be make have a second webinar. And I'm thank you and I thank you, ma'am, and immensely for your great support to be given by Professor Jan, Mary, and Fritz, ma'am, and for your wonderful topic. Actually, the topic of the first speaker has given with the human rights and addressing mandatory retirement policies and practices. So, because policies and practices of the people and the retired, the mandatory retirement life, because occupation life is a part of the life, the maximum time that we are being spending in occupation life, and their settlement after retirement as mandatory retirement comes, how the policy specifications become as an applied one, strengthening them morally and with having a moral strength, and mentally they want to have a growth confidence and a way to be sustained, how the policy will help. The address given by the Professor Jan Mary Fritz. I'm thankful. I'm really thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful insights that you've given in this way. Really, also I extend my thank to the second speaker of the webinar, and it is very another important topic by Professor Dina Uday from the University of Johannesburg on the topic of empowering whistleblowers and the clinical sociology and social justice in the workplace. So whistleblowers is being there. It's how their work. It's being related with as how this the important transparency in the field of an organization, how an organization, the whistleblowers being as a transparent work they have to do with by making the social justice in the workplace, and has been greatly addressed and with the pinpointed way by the Professor Dina Uday from her topic of empowering whistleblowers by the clinical sociology and social justice in the workplace. And thank you, ma'am, and I really extend my great thanks to you for your wonderful explanations on the part of your topic. Also, and I extend my thank to the third speaker of this webinar and Professor Ima Porio, and on the topic and from the professor, so Professor of Sociology from Ateneo de Manila University, Philippines, and for her topic on climate justice, empowerment, and community resilience. And actually, ma'am has brought that how a sociologist can work in the grassroots level, where is bringing the climate change, climate actions. Because if you see that as for the sustainable development goal, and where the climate actions being as one of the important goal, where it works which bring the people together, working with the social consciousness, how the people as they're working with the social consciousness to bring the change and social development, that's true in ensuring the climate resilience and climate actions and empowerment, when the community resilience being taken to the account with their participations, so where they can bring the climate justice as empowered. From the case of Philippines model, ma'am has been explained. I'm really thankful. I'm really thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful elaborations. How you have been explained that how your teamwork is important, governance is important, people participation importance, while we are considering about it, climate justice, environment, and climate resilience. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your wonderful wonderful explanation in the part of your lecture. Also, I extend my thank to the fourth speaker of this webinar and Professor Yoni Visi. Is another important topic, very burning issue of the society today, the addressing homelessness. And me, even ma'am is being there in the United States of America. She's telling about and she studied about the topic of burning issues related to homelessness, where the homelessness being a important issues in the developing state, and we are telling about developed states, and just imagine about the states which is being developing and underdeveloping with another economic criteria, and it's a burning issue. And we're seeing about the sociologists where we have a great important social issues being happen, like old age and homelessness, like in important issues. So homelessness and other important issues, as ma'am has explained, how it is important to be addressed by a sociologist. How much counseling is needed and social support is needed for the people of homelessness. How your community, how your government, and the civil society has to be come forward to support them and address the issues, from making the people of the homelessness to have a comfort zone, have a safer living within other communities in the world. So such a way, Professor Yoni Bising has been addressed her topic on addressing homelessness. Very wonderful, another wonderful presentations. I really express my heartfelt thanks to you, ma'am, for your interesting presentation on this part. Also, I thank finally, I express my sincere gratitude to the co-convener, Professor Namita Gupta, and so has been supported to be added as a co-convener, and for the part of and as a part of co-convener to be have a wonderful presentation of the sessions. Also, I wish to thank, along with the technical supports given by the ISA officers, Professor Cecilia Delgado Molina, and so for her support, for the technical supports being given for the wonderful completion of our international webinar. So as a whole, I once again thank all the participants, and we had important dignified participants with us with the webinar. For example, Professor Sari Hanafi and Digio Imonia Preya and Professor R.B. Bhagat and Professor Uglino Radulivo and Dibelina and Professor Sama and Dr. Andukavida, Dr. Veronica. There are a number of people. They are being those who are members of an RC41, RC46, and as well as the target group of 3 and other people from in general. They have been participated in the webinar. I thank each and everyone, all the speakers and participants, and the ISA, that are executive members of International Sociology Association, who has been kind enough permitted to conduct the International Sociology Association's Research Council second webinar in the topic of applied and clinical sociology in a smooth way. And I thank each and everyone, those who have been part of the session. Thank you so much, ma'am. I thank each and everyone, all the speakers and participants. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So as for the schedule now, it's become at times about 6:30 p.m. here as for IST Indian time. So our session is the end here. So thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you. I will keep in touch with, and I hope that the journey will continue. And out of the learning that what we had it from the applied and clinical sociology and the exploration what we had, I feel free to and work and wish to work and together for any important issues which is internationally important to have in terms of your projects, collaborations, or we started saying about the courses, certificate courses with the memorandum of understanding with the universities in India, and we try to work across any future development in the similar area, ma'am. I'm assured that I will give my all my support to be have the further action of the process as for the applied and clinical sociology is concerned. We take it to the further level of collaborations and memorandum of understanding in the academic level to bring the applied and clinical sociology to the next level and highly popular and to be people participant and visible to everyone. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for all the speakers. And from my bottom of my heart, I express my thanks to each and everyone, all the speakers and participants. Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great
Thank you.
weekend, everyone.